Okay, this is the 3-4 notes. This is pages 259 to 264 in your consumable. You need to pull those pages out. And then if you're going to do these on paper assignment, it's pages 265 to 271, 2 through 20 evens. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, etc. Okay, so this is a point slope. Point means that you have we're going to use the HK point, and then slope again is M. So normally we would say XY, but because what we'll be plugging into our formula is the HK. And the basic formula, the one that you see on any chart, will always be that, but we're going to rewrite it to being Y minus K equals M times X minus H. That way we have, we're always using our second point when we're trying to do this kind of information if we don't have the M. And if we do have the M, we'll just call it HK every time. That way we don't have two X's and two Y's in our equation. So our basic formula is if we have a line that has a slope of M and we have a point, then we can use our slope formula, which I've again rewritten as Y minus K over X minus H. We can plug in M as 4 and 2 and 1 for my K and my H. And we can solve for to figure out what the equation is in the form of what they call the point slope. So here is the version of what the point slope should look like. It is M times X minus H equals Y minus K. Doing it that way allows us to make sure that we can stick with one specific point every time. So we're going to make that our setup. At the bottom, you want to make sure to highlight that. The three most important parts there is we need to know the slope, we need to know a point, which we would call HK, and that will give us the ability to create the equation, the point slope equation. And we know it's a point slope because we can see the point and a slope in there. So when we were doing the slope intercept form, all we saw was M and B. Now we say M, H, and K. The X and Y are going to be in every single one of our equations because you have to have an input and an output, and that's what the X and Y is the input output. Okay, so I've got a couple of examples filled in here. If they give us the slope, which they do in the A, that means that M is 3.5. And then this tells us that this point is our HK. And all we have to do is substitute. It's just know your setup and substitute, okay? If they give us, and if the slope happens to be 0, then we end up with a equation of y plus 1 is 0 or y is negative 1. So that would be a horizontal line at negative 1, that kind of thing. Okay, here's another example. Every time I'm going to write down what my template that I am looking for. So I am always looking to fill in y minus k equals m times x minus h. The parts that I'm filling in, I'm looking for are these three pieces. Okay, so we need a checklist. We have a check of we need an m and we need an hk. So we are given m, we're told the slope, and we know hk because we're given a point. All we have to do is plug in what we know. K is 2, H is 1, and M is 6. And so that's all you have to do. So if I was doing this one, M would be 1/3, my H is going to be negative 3, and my K is going to be 1. So using our template, Y minus K, which is 1, equals M, which is 1/3, times X minus H, which in this case is negative 3. Now I'm putting that in parentheses, but I'm remembering that a minus times a negative becomes a plus. So our answer ends up being y minus 1 equals 1/3 times x plus 3. Okay, now if we have a word problem, the word problems are going to give us some kind of an information that can translate into a point. And this is saying it cost, I got that backwards. It cost $15 for 3 lines, which means our lines is based on, our cost is based on the number of lines. Then it costs $2 for each additional line. That tells us our slope and also helps us to know that 3 was the x and or h, and 15 was the k. So filling in our equation, we can then solve for a arbitrary x, this time x is 8, by plugging in not only the equation, but then also putting an x, 8 where x was, and then solving for y. Okay, so seeing that in action would be Daisy purchases a gym membership. She pays a sign-up fee and a monthly fee. So the monthly fee is going to be our slope because you pay it every month. After 4 months, she has paid a total of $59. So here is where we're getting our point. Well, what is the changing that's going to be determining your cost? Well, that's the number of months. So this is our x value, which is our h, and that means the cost is our k. So our hk is 459, and our m was 11. So what is our equation? Y minus k is m times x plus minus h. So y minus 59 is equal to 11 times x minus 4. And now using that, you can figure out what the sign up fee is. Well, the sign up fee is when time is at 0. So this is time 0. So that means x is 0. So we're going to plug 0 in for x and do y minus 59 is 11 times 0 minus 4. So 0 minus 4 is negative 4. So that's y minus 59 is 11 times negative 4, or negative 44. And then we add 59 to both sides to figure out, well, when she started, it cost $15. Okay. So you have to use the template to plug in your slope and your HK. Then you can use the equation you now have to plug in any X you want to figure out what the Y was. Okay. What happens if we aren't given the slope? Well, in that case, we first have to find the slope, then we plug it in. So here's a fully filled out problem. We were given 2 points, so we're going to name them x, y, and hk, use our slope formula, and then again, we're going to pick the point that was my hk to plug in. So let's do that one more time. We'll say this is our hk, x, y. Is there a reason why I flipped it? Not really, except for the fact that that's a 0, and I like having zeros in problems. 0 is always easier to add or subtract. So this time it is, again, y minus k over x minus h. So we have y, which is 1, minus k, which is 1, x, which is 1, minus 0, which is h. So we have a 0 over 1. Our slope is 0. So y minus k equals m times x minus h. Y minus 1 is 0 times x minus 0. Now, anything times 0 is going to be 0, but x minus 0 is still x times 0. So we get y minus 1 equals 0. Okay, one more example. This is working out a word problem, and they gave us a graph. So this is a chart. So the graph is just giving us a x, y combination. And since we have 2 points on each, that means we are starting out with needing to find our slope. And then they want us to figure out, well, how many hours is 24? So this is our find x, or find y when x is 24. So that's the second step part of the problem. So Analyzing the information, Joan worked for 6 weeks and had a total of 15 hours. Miguel worked for 10 weeks and had a total of 23 hours. So we want to know how many hours Lily worked if she worked 24 hours. So going through, we would at first identify the two pairs and find the slope. Then we would use the number of weeks as the x to find the y, which is the number of hours that she worked. Our 2 points is 6:15 and 10:23. So I named 6:15 our xy, 10:23 is our hk, and then did the math for the slope. Then we plug into y minus k equals m times x minus h, substituting our m that we found and the x, h and k that we found, we labeled our points. Once you have that, that is your equation now. Now we can use that equation to plug in any x we want. Well, we want to know what the y is when x is 24. When we do that, we end up with y is 51. So Lily worked 51 hours. Okay, one more example. What if they give us a graph? Well, you can use either the graph method, which is the counting up and then over, rise over run, to find your slope, or you can use the formula. I've done both. Then once you have that, we know that we labeled our h and k one of the 2 points. I picked the bottom one, and then we put it into the equation. Now, once we have our equation, we can go back and say, well, find the amount that the member would like to pay for 22 gallons. So that means our x is 22. We'll plug it into the equation we just found, and we end up that the dollar amount that they're paying is $61. Okay? So that is all of the notes for this section.